Welcome to the latest version. I'm your host, Betsy Bush. If you're at a point in your life or your career where you're feeling you'd like to try something new but not sure how to go about it, or maybe you're feeling stuck in a job with no social impact and you want to feel like you're making a difference, well, maybe you should try volunteering. Volunteering is such an American thing to do. We have this volunteer nonprofit sector in our society where we help each other, giving to the food bank, delivering meals to seniors and shut-ins, helping out at the local library. The list goes on and on. And what every volunteer knows is that by helping others, you help yourself as well. My guest today is Katie Pfeifer, Senior Director of Programs at Volunteer New York, an agency in Westchester County, New York, that connects volunteers with nonprofit organizations. Katie, I'm so glad you're here with us today on the latest version. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on to talk about this wonderful topic.
Great. Well, as we know, we're coming out of this age of COVID where we've been shut up and isolated and starting to reemerge and maybe reassessing a lot of what we've been doing with our lives all this time. Maybe a lot of us don't want to go back to the hour-plus commute to a job where we didn't really feel like we were contributing or wasn't helping us feel like we were contributing. And maybe it's time to look for something new or reassess how we're spending our lives. What do you think as a volunteer coordinator?
Absolutely. It is a time of change for many people right now, and really thinking about what it is that they want to do. I think a lot of people value the working from home and the chance to spend that commute time on things that they love, whether it's with their families or delivering food and helping and making phone calls to seniors who are at home and isolated, or whatever that looks like. And so it really is a chance to explore different options.
So at Volunteer New York, it's kind of like I don't want to say a dating service, it's kind of like a matching service where people who want to, who are looking for opportunities to volunteer but wouldn't know what is out there or available, or even how you would approach an agency generally, would come to you for help. So explain a little bit how that works.
Absolutely. And we sometimes refer to ourselves as a dating matching service as well. So it was okay that you did. We very much are helping people of all stages, ages, ability levels, skill levels, figure out the great places to volunteer, and helping the nonprofits on the other side of that bridge figure out how to get the volunteers that they need to do their mission. So we have an online database, and you can look for any and all kinds of opportunities, one-day opportunities, ongoing opportunities, any issue area that you're interested in. There's a way to help and make a difference. And so we really are there kind of making those matches for everyone.
How many nonprofits nonprofit organizations do you have in your database, and what kinds of organizations are they?
Sure. We work with about 500 nonprofits in Westchester, Rockland, and Putnam counties, so just outside of New York City. But we're one of several Points of Light affiliates. They're a global organization, global volunteer connector organization. So there's many organizations like us across the country. And one of the things that we do, the different organizations we work with, so food distribution programs, whether it's a soup kitchen or delivery and pantry, tutoring programs, environmental programs, working with seniors, the hospitals, the assisted livings, libraries. I mean, you name it, many of those organizations.
You mentioned a nationwide agency, and I'm not sure
Yes.
I got the name there.
Sure. So we are an affiliate of Points of Light. They are a national global organization, and they really are about promoting volunteerism, civic engagement, and getting people involved.
Mm-hmm. When someone comes to you, say mid-career, and I'm thinking, 50s, maybe early 60s, and says, I'm really looking for I'm feeling stuck in my career, but I don't know how to get the kinds of experience I need to add to my resume, to burnish my resume a bit, to be offered the kind of interesting opportunities I want. Is there some way that they can do that through volunteering?
Yes, they can. So we actually have a program called Job Readiness Through Volunteerism. And it really is, Betsy, speaking to that point that you're making, where it's a way to build your experience and try new things. And so we really turn and ask the person to think about what it is that they want to do or what they are considering doing. And we help match them to those opportunities. So someone who may be from a corporate background who wants to switch and get into hospitals and working in healthcare, well, volunteer at a nursing home, volunteer at a hospital, kind of get a feel for what that is like, see the patient side, see the administration side, and then you can kind of say, you know what, this is for me, or no, I would rather do something else, and then we can make that match there too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, we kind of idealize what it might be like to work in a certain setting, and then when you get the chance to volunteer, maybe it is and maybe it's not. It's kind of an interesting way to test the waters a bit.
Absolutely. It is a great way to test the waters. And it's a way to try in a setting that is less pressure from, leaving a job and going into a field that then you choose and decide you don't like. Mm-hmm. So it's a way to test it.
What about people who are saying, well, maybe they're moving into retirement, so they're looking not for a way to continue a career or move into another career, but it's really about, this is my time for me to make a difference in my community. What kind of things do you think are open to them?
Everything is open to them. I mean, we see that with our RSVP members. So there are people over 55 right in this pool of people. And many of them, we have some that want to continue in the field that they are. So we have people who had been in HR that continue to do job coaching and mock interviewing and this. And then you have other people who say, you know what, I did finance my whole life. I want to read with children and do tutoring. And so you have that mix of really picking what it is that connects and speaks to you. And it's okay to say no to something.
I'm wondering if you can share some stories of some volunteers that you've worked with who have moved successfully from one career to another through volunteering, or transitioned very well into retirement using volunteering.
Yes. So one of the first examples that really come to mind for me is we actually had someone, she was a nurse and had been a nurse for 20 years. And she was looking to get out of nursing and into another field. And there are so many wonderful transferable skills that nurses have, and they are a backbone of our community. And she wasn't getting calls and she wasn't getting interviews. And so when we looked at her resume, one of the things we noticed was that she was the manager of her co-op's pool. She was hiring staff. She was ordering supplies. She was setting a schedule. She was really managing and facilitating that system for 10 years. And it was a footnote at the very bottom of her resume. And so our advice was to bring that up in your resume, really highlight the skills that you were using. And then that's project management skills right there. And so it was a successful, helpful transition into a project management role. Is one example that comes up. Another one is that we've had some people who start out as they are semi-retired, they cut back on what they're doing, and then they start volunteering and they take on more and more projects. So we have someone who is a tutor in a great program called JCY, Westchester Community Partners, so working with an elementary school student on reading. But he also is a conversation partner at WCC, Westchester Community College. So he's helping an ESL learner practice English and have just everyday kind of conversations. And, every time we turn around, it's, okay, what else do you have for me? I want to do something else. I want something there. So really great opportunities to retire slowly and then figure out what you want.
I would think something like being able to talk to someone who's learning English, who has had a very different cultural background from yourself, that you learn a lot about that other person's journey to the United States and the place that they came from. I would imagine that's very enriching personally.
Yes, it is. We like to say that, volunteering is really, people come to it to help other people, but in reality, they get more out of it than the other person does. And it really is a rich and rewarding experience. And so in that case, you get to learn about another culture, another country, and just how people interact and do. And it's something you might not get to experience except for as a volunteer.
I wonder if I saw on your website that you also have ways of recruiting board members for nonprofit organizations. And that's it's kind of a rarefied area, because I think when people think of volunteering, it's kind of hands-on, packing food for the food pantry distribution, et cetera. But there's something about board membership that's very important, and yet it's something that is maybe a little obscure for a lot of volunteers who would really have a lot to offer to lead on nonprofit boards.
Yes. A lot of times people do think of those hands-on activities, but every single nonprofit needs volunteers. So they might not have an opportunity for hands-on service, but they need volunteer board members. And they really bring their financial and marketing and strategic thinking background to that organization and really help guide its direction and connect it. And I love that program that you mentioned. That's our board boot camp and speed dating program. And it really creates a pipeline of different and diverse candidates for boards. Because sometimes boards will turn to people that they know. And so you end up with a lot of the same people who bring a lot to a board, but it is helpful to have different perspectives come in. And
Absolutely.
So being able to recruit people outside of your ordinary network is a really important and powerful thing.
Yeah, and maybe we should just explain that a nonprofit board is the governing board of the organization that really determines, what the direction of the organization, and is in charge of its financial well-being and its legal well-being and all those other things that go into managing a nonprofit so that it is successful as an organization from the top down. So even to hiring the executive director and, I guess, I don't know if a board would hire senior staff, but they would hire the executive director, which is a very important role right there, because that person becomes the face of the organization. So, Katie, let's talk about how volunteering has maybe made an impact in your own life. You must have some connection here, because obviously you're doing such a great job at Volunteer New York.
Well, thank you. So I've been volunteering since I was young. And one of the things we found at Volunteer New York is that when people start volunteering young, they are volunteers for life. But I was actually a Girl Scout for 12 years. So did many different volunteer experiences through that. And actually, after I graduated from graduate school, I have a master's in public policy, I moved to Philadelphia. And I started volunteering with an organization called Back on My Feet, which is a running-based program for people experiencing homelessness. And through kind of group runs and building community, we help transition people out of homeless shelters and into jobs and apartments and different pieces there. And so when I moved to Philadelphia, I actually didn't have a job. And I started volunteering, and I loved it. And it was a really wonderful, rewarding experience. And about 6 months into that volunteer experience, they had a job opening, and I applied for it. And I had never worked with people experiencing homelessness. I had never done outreach before. I had never been in a homeless shelter before. But I really feel like I got hired because of what I demonstrated as a volunteer. I showed up every day. I was committed. I was there. I was flexible. I was willing to try new things, and they could teach me all the other pieces. But what I brought kind of as a volunteer showcased that. And that's actually how I got into this space of volunteering, was kind of through that organization. And it really, not every volunteer turns into a paid staff member, but it does give you those skills and a way to learn and experience a new field that you don't have experience in, to really build that into a potential career path.
I'm so intrigued by this idea of organizing runs for homeless people, and through that you build community and connections with other people, and through that you get them into a better situation. That I've never heard of an organization like that or a mission like that, and I find that really intriguing.
It is. It's a fantastic organization. They're in 13 cities now, I think.
Oh.
But it really is, we would do a monthly race, so 5Ks on up. They have people running marathons even. And you're working with people who many of, and I don't mean to generalize completely, but many had never fully finished something before. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to run with someone else and cross a finish line and feel that accomplishment, then you're more in a place of feeling confident that you can complete this certification and job training, and they have staff that's working with them, and there's financial assistance, and it really helps to move people and just give them that opportunity, that chance that we have in general as a society written people off. And so it's kind of saying, no, you are really important to us, and we want to give you that boost.
That's fantastic. Tell us the name of that organization again.
Back on My Feet.
Back on My Feet. And it's in 13 cities.
I think it's in 13 cities. Yeah.
Wow.
Philadelphia is where it started. It's in New York City as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, maybe my listener will look for Back on My Feet and Google it, and maybe find a branch in his or her own hometown and get involved. That is an incredible story. One thing that I think a lot of women face is this question of volunteering. Sometimes you feel pressured to stick with a career even if you don't find it rewarding, or maybe view volunteering as something only for maybe more privileged women who don't have to work for a living or financially secure, and that sometimes that volunteering, even of those women who are in a place where they can volunteer, that sometimes there's a diminishment of that of that subset of women, that they're kind of viewed as the ladies who lunch crowd, when they really could be doing some very important work, including fundraising, which is hard but extremely necessary when you come to the nonprofit sector. Do you have any thoughts on women and volunteering in general?
Many of our volunteers are women. I think you're quite right. I think that some parents feel obligated or feel pushed into kind of saying yes to something that they don't want to do. And that's a women, I think in general, we say yes to things that we don't want to. And we should all stop doing that and only say yes to things that we want to do.
Yes.
But I think that it's seeing and trying to understand the different types of volunteering that there is that's available, because someone who doesn't have a lot of time, they can still help. Maybe it's at an event at your kid's school or through your religious organization, and it's a one-time kind of event. You don't have to be on the planning committee for the mm-hmm. fair, but you can volunteer at the fair mm-hmm. and you can contribute that way. And I think the other point, that you were sharing, I think you're right. We do tend to look at some of the women who volunteer as, well, they're doing that because they have nothing else. But actually what they're doing is they're saying, this is really important to me. And so I am going to take my time and I'm going to use this. And I think many of them feel like they are in a place of privilege where they have that extra abundance of time. And so they are prioritizing and choosing to do something, which is amazing. And you're right, fundraising is a crucial and important part of volunteering and organizations. And so what they do matters very much. I think that women can and should figure out, kind of think about what it is that you want to do and really focus in on that. And it's okay to take some time for yourself and decide that this is what you want to do. There's a great organization in Westchester called Impact 100 Westchester. It's a collective giving organization. And so in Westchester, members, they give $1,000 and then they each get a vote for where that money goes, and they give a large gift. And someone on our staff actually is a member of Impact 100. Mm-hmm. And this is how she's choosing to spend her free time. She's not maybe an athlete, she's not a painter, she's not going to classes like that, but this is how she wants to do it. And I think that's amazing, and really saying, this is what's important to me, this is how I'm going to spend my time.
I think Impact 100 is a group that's called a giving circle.
Yes.
Right? Where everyone puts in a certain amount of money, and then as a group, they all decide how they're going to spend that, as a grant money. Mm-hmm. But also it helps, because they explore the different needs in their community. It's also a great educational vehicle for people who, a lot of people don't know, haven't ventured into those parts of their community where there is real need, and this brings them into contact with those kinds of things.
Yes, and there's many other kind of giving circles. So you mentioned that name, which is great. I know one in Westchester around food and food insecurity. There's another one in Rockland called Women Who Dine for a Cause, and that one, it really is everybody gives what they can at the different events. And so, you can join a giving collective and do that learning and not have to give at a set level, right? So you feel like it's not for you, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like it is something that's open to everybody, mm-hmm. and it's a way to explore those organizations.
Do you see a difference between the way women use volunteering and the way men use volunteering?
It's a really great question. I've never actually thought of that before. I will be honest with that. Many of our RSVP members who are over 55 are actually women. We don't have as many men that volunteer, although there are some really great men who volunteer as well. I think that, as far as continuing careers, we see, men wanting to volunteer in that role, although women absolutely do too. But I think for women, it's a chance to help either kind of connected to their family or religious organization, or, a cause that really is near and dear to their heart.
I wonder if men tend to be more career oriented. So if it's not something, and again, I don't want to generalize too much, but if it's not something they're being paid for, they'd rather do a hobby that's, I don't know, maybe athletics, sports, or golf, or something like that. And I just don't know. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by this difference.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point that you're making. And I think of it in my family. My husband, his hobby is sailing, which is like a full afternoon. My hobby is running, which, maybe an hour. So it's I think part of that too is thinking about how much time you feel like you have to give.
Mm-hmm. Do you see a difference between the way young people are volunteering and maybe their parents or even grandparents are volunteering?
Yes, there is a difference between the generations and how they volunteer. So a lot of younger people are using their voice. So they're, advocating on social media, showing up to different events. They are, really that expanded kind of definition of volunteering outside of I'm going to go and help a specific person at a specific time. And older people tend to volunteer in that regard. Younger people we're seeing want to do a lot more one-day projects. So they just want to kind of sign up for a couple hours and do that commitment. And that's that. And then come back another day and volunteer at another organization. Older adults tend to pick an organization and a project and, every week continue to volunteer, what that looks like. And then the last difference is really around issue areas. So Points of Light, the organization I had mentioned, they did a big study on civic engagement a few months ago. And one of the things they found, for older adults, hunger and homelessness is the top issue among a couple others. And that wasn't on the list for young people. Younger people, it was really more around race and equity, the environment and climate change. And so we're seeing a difference in that regard too.
Wow. I wonder, I think we could unpack that for a while, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do think there's a more activist strain in younger people who are very concerned with social justice issues. And I think social media helps get the word out about social justice. And but that's interesting about hunger and homelessness being less on their radar. Katie, I always ask every guest at the end of our conversations, what 3 pieces of advice would you have to share with someone who is mid-career or early retirement looking to volunteer, or how might they pursue volunteering as a, step to that next part of their lives?
Yeah. So I have three pieces of advice. So one is definitely to volunteer. So if you're local to Volunteer New York, come to volunteernewyork.org and find a great volunteer opportunity there. If you are part of the national audience, the website to go to is it's engage.pointsoflight.org. So it's the Engage search engine for Points of Light. And you can find opportunities close to you from organizations like ours all over. And so the next piece would be to start small. I think it's really daunting and scary to kind of say, I want to change something, but I don't know what that is. And I don't know how I want to change it. And so start small with volunteering. Pick a one-day project. Go do a park cleanup. Go to a readathon. Go to a kind of grandparent visiting day at a nursing home. And just check it out and see what you like and see what you didn't like. And then that leads into my next piece, which is really thinking and taking the time, which for women is not an easy thing to do, right? Like prioritizing yourself and saying, I want to figure out what's important to me, but give yourself that time to think about what it is that you want and also what you don't want. We get a lot of people who will call and say, I'm looking to volunteer. And we'll say, well, what do you want to do? Anything. And then you start to list examples. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And that's okay. It's actually better to say, you know what, I don't want to work with kids, or I don't want to work in a hospital, than to say I want to work with anything, but that's not actually accurate. And make that list. And whether it's from past volunteering or from different jobs that you've had, and focus in on the things that you like and the things that you liked about that job. And then as you're looking for what's next, you want to find a place that has more of the stuff you like and less of the stuff you didn't like.
One of the through lines that we find in a lot of my conversations with people who have made interesting pivots in their lives is going back to those early childhood passions, whether it was art or music or theater or something like that. Do you think the same thing applies to volunteering?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can go back to those memories. So maybe it was going and handing out food at a food pantry. Maybe it was coming together to paint a mural at a community center. Maybe it was a field day for kids, and pull out that common thread of all the different things you liked and say, hey, that's maybe where I'm supposed to be. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think this has been a really enriching conversation, Katie. So much to think about, and I think you've given our listener a lot of places to start. Start thinking about what it is that you'd want to do and getting in touch with the volunteer matchup program nearest you. If you're not in the Hudson Valley region of New York State, go to engage.pointsoflight.org and get to start there. Or, of course, your house of worship might have something going on, or there might be community activities in your neighborhood that you should really check out. But go out and do something, because it'll be so enriching for you, and you'll be helping other people as well. And I think there's just so much. There's so much in this country that needs help, that needs your help, and can really enrich our lives all around. And Katie, you've done a great job today introducing us to the idea of volunteering.
Well, thank you very much. And I hope your listener goes out, finds that place to volunteer, and builds the community that you're looking to see.
Great. Thanks a lot, Katie.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.